My wife and I were together for 20 years when a train derailed 2 miles from our home. It was full of chlorine gas, so when it crashed, a massive toxic cloud formed. We were eating dinner with our 17-year-old son, who was telling us about his day at school. The television was off, and our cell phones were in another room. Then we heard the sirens of the fire chief's car, dragging through our neighborhood, telling everyone on a megaphone to evacuate their homes due to the toxic chemical cloud heading right for us. Once we gathered enough supplies and clothes for a few days and got in the car, we realized that we were one of the last families to leave. Trash was split all over the neighborhood from fallen trash cans, and there weren't any cars in sight. After sitting in traffic for 7 hours, half expecting the cloud to come up behind our car, we finally arrived at Camp Rafiki. It was a summer camp for children, turned into a much-needed respite for hundreds of families. We were assigned 3 cots right beside each other, among a sea of other cots. We got freshened up, and were given any toiletries we forgot at home. Meals were cooked using the camp's kitchen. It really felt like a safe haven, but that feeling would disappear for me as soon as I remembered our home was simmering in a cloud of chlorine. I'd heard stainless steel appliances melt in chlorine gas, so I was devastated. It was going to be a mess in our neighborhood for a while, and I wondered where we were going to stay. My wife started playing the piano in the room for all to hear. There was a crowd of about 30 people around her, listening intently, and even more listening from across the room. She started playing piano as a child, so it soothed her and everyone around her. I could tell she enjoyed the attention, but I was just glad she didn't feel as upset as me. Our son was talking with a group of teenagers around the foosball table. Seeing my family so calm, and even enjoying themselves, suddenly made me feel calm. I went from stressed and tense to relaxed and desperate for some sleep. So I laid on my cot and passed out. I woke up hours later. It was dark outside, and it seemed like everyone was sleeping in their cot except my wife. Her cot was empty, so I took a look around. I found her sitting cross-legged on another man's cot. He was sitting on it with her, awfully close, while she was telling him a story from her childhood. I cleared my throat and asked her to come to bed. She hesitated, and it looked like she tried to think of a reason to stay, but there wasn't any reason I would accept to allow her to continue talking to this guy late into the night. I knew her extremely well by this point, so I knew she knew how bad it was that she was up talking to this guy while I was sleeping. Back at our cots, I asked her why she was talking to him and what they said. She was embarrassed and said it wasn't a big deal, they were just getting to know each other. I asked what she now knew about him. She just said it wasn't important, and laid down to sleep. The next day, many of the survivors were playing volleyball or basketball, including me, my son, wife, and AP. After each game or point, I saw him high-five or fist-bump my wife. She was starting it too, it wasn't just him. Then I saw her go in for a hug. He looked so pleased, but then he saw me glaring at him and walked away. She turned to see me and pretended nothing was wrong. Lunch was served, and with our plates in hand, my wife suggested we sit outside. She led our son and I to the table where AP was sitting. I thought about protesting, but I didn't want to have to explain why in front of our son. I just ate food and listened to what was said. AP mentioned it would probably be one more day at the camp before everyone could return home. My wife looked sad at the thought of going home. I felt super weird when she asked AP if he was ever lonely living by himself. I didn't know how she knew he lived alone, that must have been something they spoke about while I was sleeping. He said his dog kept him company, but he and I both knew it seemed like my wife wanted to keep him company. I stood up and told them I'd like to go on a family walk. My wife had the nerve to ask me if she could stay behind to finish eating. She only had peas on her plate, and her blatant disregard for me and our son was alarming. She was already choosing AP over me. I told her to come with us now, so thankfully she did. On the walk, with our son ahead of us, I asked her what the heck she was thinking. I had to point out all the obvious ways she was flirting with AP, and she still denied that she was flirting or misbehaving. I told her I didn't want her to talk to him anymore. She didn't say anything, but agreed. That was all I needed for her to respect my wishes, even if I was being overprotective. The next day, everything seemed to be going fine, but our son went off with some teenagers for a while. When it was almost time for dinner, I went to find him. He was hanging out by the tree line, and really enjoyed talking to this one girl in particular. I was glad he got the chance to meet her. She was homeschooled in the very same neighborhood as us, but might have never met my son if it hadn't been for the chemical spill. He was feeling great about life, so I just told him to be back in a little while for dinner. When I got back to the building filled with cots and people anxious to eat, I couldn't find my wife. I also noticed pretty quickly that AP was gone too. I searched the crowded building and property around until I spotted them about 15 yards inside the tree line. There was a spot without so many sticks and brush. They were laying on a blanket, trying to stay out of my sight as I approached. I yelled to my wife that I could see her, and she was an idiot. With a raised, booming voice, I asked her what the heck she was doing. My emotions were level 10, but it was almost like I couldn't feel them. I was on autopilot on the inside, because I think if my brain let me feel the full impact of this moment, I would have broken down. My wife stood up sheepishly, clearly ashamed of herself. When she got close to me, she said she was really sorry, and wanted to go back with me now. I told her I couldn't just ignore the fact that she was just laying in the woods with AP. He was still laying on the blanket a short distance away, turned away from us, like he was waiting until I left to move. My paranoid brain was telling me he could have easily done something with my wife, because she was only wearing a short dress. She didn't have much clothing resistance against foolish, spontaneous decisions. I stopped her from walking away, and asked her if she just slept with AP in the woods, while I was looking for her son. She said no right away, but she looked like she was about to cry. I asked why she looked like this, but she just ran away, back to the cots. I was getting extremely annoyed, and refused to even speak to AP. My wife was acting like someone who suddenly had no idea how to behave like an adult. I decided as I followed her that she was at least having an emotional affair, and consciously decided to sneak into the woods with him, where they may or may not have had sex. This was grounds for divorce, and it never would have happened if the train didn't derail. That night, as our son slept, I woke up my wife and got her to confess. They did have sex, but it only lasted all but 5 minutes, and she completely regretted it. They waited so long to go into the woods that it literally ended right before I found them. I can't explain how terrible I felt at this moment. I felt like my home was gone, and now my family was too. Then my wife added that she knew AP before this. She'd been over to his house to welcome him to the neighborhood, and a few other times when I was at work. I was fuming. She said they never did anything before this, but I found that very hard to believe, because now, in an emergency situation with her own family, she slept with him. I went over to AP as he slept and whacked him over the head with his hardcover book a few times. He was alarmed. Then I had to make myself stop, so I just went outside to jog around the property. I planned out how I was going to separate from and divorce my wife. When we were cleared to return to our neighborhood, I told her I was going to file for divorce, so she needed to stay somewhere else. She bawled and cried and begged me to forgive her for our son's sake, so she could come home with us and help clean up the mess left behind, so our lives could return to normal. She said 5 minutes of meaningless, mistake sex shouldn't be enough to end 20 years of marriage. I told her it most certainly was, and said she needed to have a conversation with our son, explaining why she wasn't going to be living with us anymore. Our son despised her. He found it extremely hard to believe that I would just break up with her for no reason, which is all she told him. I didn't care if she planned to go with AP or what, but she did tell me she was planning to call her dad. 4 months later, the house I now share with my son was fully stored, with the melted appliances and wiring replaced. I told my son by this point what really happened, so he might be more prepared for his date and future. Obviously, he couldn't think of his mom the same way after that. He was hurt by her actions too, and he let her know about it when she called me in tears, asking to come back home. She hadn't contacted me or our son in that entire time, but she justified that by saying she didn't want to bother us. I told her I already knew from her dad that she didn't stay with him like she said, and as her husband, nearly ex, I deserved to know where she spent the past 4 months. She admitted she'd been with AP some of that time, but she just wanted to come home now. In reality, she'd been staying in AP's uncle's shed, while his house was repaired. Once his house was ready to be moved into, he dumped her, because 4 months in a shed was all the time he needed with her. That's when our son grabbed the phone and told her he didn't want his father to take her back, because he deserved better. Then he hung up on her, and I never answered her calls again. Okay, your wife's behavior was extremely selfish, inconsiderate, and disrespectful. She found a single man and started talking to him like she was a single woman, even though you were always somewhere nearby. I can only imagine how upset and betrayed you must have been. I am proud of you for how you handled this terrible situation. You refused to go home with her, because her behavior and decisions were unforgivable. She most likely had slept with this man before, and even if she didn't, there was still a connection between them that she never expected you to know about. Your son was right, you do deserve better than that. 20 years should have meant more to your wife. Her loyalty should have been unbreakable. I am glad you and your son managed to get through this together. I wish you both the best of luck and success in life. Thank you for sharing this story. Now let's get into our next story for today. At the age of 38, I still didn't have any children of my own. I was waiting until I knew I had the right woman, and it was the right time. That's when I met my girlfriend for 2 short years. She was 34 and had 2 daughters from a failed marriage. She seemed like a woman who was reeled into a long-term relationship with a bad man due to an unexpected pregnancy and her mother's poor advice. I decided to continue seeing her, and the more we got to talk, the more I fell for her. She was incredibly smart and loved history. She read out loud to her kids every night, and was going to school online to earn her teaching degree. Even though life threw her curved balls, she was trying hard, which was what I respected most about her. Things changed after her sister passed away unexpectedly. My girlfriend became overwhelmed with grief. She felt like she could die at any minute and found it disturbing that all humans ever do is waste time until they inevitably die. She started talking more about the end of the world and clicked on any YouTube videos that mentioned potential war or weapon launches. At night before bed, she started saying she hoped I wouldn't die before her, because she wouldn't be able to handle it. She developed this fear of blood clots forming in her arms, legs, or neck, so she would jump up several times while we watched a movie or relaxed, just to march in place and move her arms around. I realized she had a problem, so I asked her if she'd be willing to seek treatment. She didn't want to go to counseling, but she did believe in God, so I suggested she ask the church for help of some kind. My girlfriend was skeptical she could handle any other weekly activity besides raising the children and doing online classes. I assured her I would watch her kids on the night she went to the church, if they could make her feel better about life. She took my offer, and told me they assigned her a weekly arts and crafts class to teach small children. She was really excited about it, and things started to get better immediately. She seemed more calm, and things stopped stressing her out as much. A few weeks later, though, something changed again. She was calm, but also less observant and sharp. Things that normally wouldn't have confused her suddenly did. She laughed out loud more often. She stopped marching in place, but would go outside randomly to walk around the house a few times. It took me a month before I went outside while she was walking to watch her. I saw her take a puff from a vape pen. She coughed a little. I immediately thought it was a medical vape cartridge, which wasn't legal in our state. I walked up to her and asked how she was smoking one of these. She was hesitant to say anything, and tried to show me it wasn't what I thought it was, but in doing so, I discovered it was. I made a confident guess that each time she stepped outside was to vape without me knowing. She admitted it wasn't just for that, but she enjoyed the walking too. I asked how she was getting these cartridges, and she didn't want to tell me. She said it was no concern of mine, and I should just let her continue what she's doing, because she feels better now. I took this time to mention that we hadn't made love in quite some time, so I was worried that she was getting love from someone else, and that maybe this person was also giving her cartridges. Her jaw dropped, and she denied this, but I could tell instantly that I guessed what was happening. She wouldn't admit it, though, and why wouldn't she? If she refused to admit it, she might get to keep living in my house with me serving as her free babysitter. I forgot to mention she was desperate for a place to live when we met, so I let her move in with me pretty fast. Now I felt like a fool, because she was up to something. I ordered a GPS tracker to put on her car. The next time she said she was going to her class, I anxiously watched her location on my phone. I was infuriated at this point, sure that she was taking advantage of me. I watched until she arrived at the crappy motel across from the cemetery. I asked her mom to come watch the kids, and told her what was going on. She was surprised and didn't want to believe me, but she did come watch the kids. I got to the hotel and started filming on my phone. I banged on the door in front of her car, and heard a scramble inside. When AP opened the door, he only had a towel around his waist, and I could see my wife's eyes peeking out from behind the bed. I told her I could see her, and felt my heart twist like a pretzel. I asked if this was the guy she got her cartridges from, and he said it was none of my business. I snapped, screaming in his face that it was most certainly my business. AP just put his hands up, and told my wife it was time to go home to Daddy. Outside she told me she only lied to protect me and the kids, because she didn't trust this guy. There were so many things wrong with that statement. I pointed out that she was a complete idiot for meeting this guy alone in a hotel room, if she didn't trust him. Secondly, I said she didn't need to protect us from that guy, she just didn't want me to know she was sleeping with him in exchange for illegal drugs, all taking place while I watched her kids as she could go to the church. I screamed that she was just using me for a place to live, but I knew now she was a horrible mistake. I didn't love her, because she just proved she didn't love or respect me. She was selling herself for drugs. I left her there, in the motel parking lot. I didn't care if she followed me, but she did. She heard me telling her mom and kids to get the flip out of my house. When they yelled in protest, I called her a lying cheater, among other truthful insults. Eventually, they got the gist, and started packing their cars with children and stuff. While they did so, my girlfriend tried telling her mom I didn't want them to live in my house anymore, because I was selfish and evil. I disproved that by showing her mother the video I took. Her mother was furious, and told her daughter I should leave her, after the extreme dishonesty and betrayal. It was just a short while later, while they were all living at her mom's house, that my ex was arrested on drug charges. OP, I am sorry your girlfriend convinced you to let her move in with her kids, only to prove she was a selfish and disturbed woman. She could have resolved these issues, and sought help properly, but she took the route that would benefit her the most, without consideration for her kids or you. I don't believe she realized how important it was for her to avoid two major things. Illegal activities as a mother, and infidelity as a girlfriend, who depended on her boyfriend's trust and generosity. She ruined whatever chance you all had for a happy life together, simply because she couldn't handle her grief and mental obstacles in an honorable way. You have a second chance to find true love and have your own children. I appreciate you sharing this story as an example to our viewers. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to both stories for today. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take first story. A friend sent his husband a hidden camera recording of his wife cheating on him with a famous singer. Terrifying revenge for cheating. Watch it all the way to the end, you won't regret it. I have heard amazing stories of adultery more than once or twice, but I never thought I would be in their shoes. I still don't understand how that happened. My wife has never required anything, according to appearances, and I appear to make a respectable living. Yes, in theory, and my intimate life has always been at a high level, or so it has previously seemed to me. One thing happens as a result, my wife starts to walk and my horns start to scratch the ceiling. Where did everything begin? Random encounters or discussions have frequently occurred in my life and drastically altered the course of my entire existence. I owe my professional success and useful relationships outside of work to them. This time, the situation was much the same. I frequently do this to give my brain a little vacation during my lunch break as I leisurely strolled across the city and casually turned my head in the direction of a neighboring restaurant. What was there that I saw? It goes without saying that my wife is with his ex-boyfriend. I nearly lost my footing, even with my eyes somewhat obscured by the onslaught of feelings. I collected myself after a few moments, determined it wouldn't be too hot to wait until nightfall, and decided to finally put an end to the problem. I most definitely wouldn't allow someone to get me horny. I eventually made it to my workplace where I started to wait in a frenzy for the conclusion of the workday, because there was going to be a fairly serious conversation had something to start it. In this brief period of time, I more or less managed to calm my nerves. But I had no idea what a true performance would be in these kinds of situations. Accused his wife of infidelity right away, what if she simply met her ex by chance in a restaurant? But given that the restaurant was located 10 kilometers from our home at the opposite end of the city, what was she to do there? There were many unanswered questions, therefore it was important to choose the best answer in order to get the complete truth. Finally, the workday came to an end. I got in my car and slowly made my way home while thinking about everything in a delirious manner. I didn't even realize how far I had traveled. I was now at home. I sat for a while before getting up to go. My wife threw herself into my arms from the threshold, as she always did. I slowly backed away and calmly entered the kitchen before sitting down at the dining room table and requesting my wife make me some coffee. This is how I usually end my day at the workplace. She followed my instructions as if nothing had happened. So I inquired as to her day's activities and any recent events. My wife lied calmly and in front of my eyes that she had gone to the store with friends and purchased a few new blouses without even flinching. Yes, because of this kind of snobbery, I almost fell off the chair there. It must be able to be so bold as to lie and not blush. Then it occurred to me that we should gather incriminating proof before dumping all the wives. I thus made that choice. I sneaked out the following morning and snatched Rocker's keys. I unlocked it and placed the cover recorder in a private location. What? It would provide a sizable body of proof. Following our breakfast together, I went to work as usual. Such a tight pace carried on for 3 days. The work piled up so much that I nearly forgot about the event with his wife, as if by coincidence. But as the long-awaited weekend finally arrived, I made the decision to check the recorder. I watched that while almost shaking my hands. My worst concerns came true as I had expected. How much was my wife cheating on me? She was speaking to his best buddy when he claimed that she had drunkenly flirted with 2 of her coworkers at the next corporate party, in addition to the fact that she frequently has meetings with his ex in the exact automobile I got her for her birthday. I was practically on the ground there. It turns out that she had been cheating on me virtually non-stop, and I, being stupid and brainless, had not even caught her. Now though, I was certain about my wife. What to do with her at this point was the only crucial decision I had to make. Living with her wasn't something I wanted. To induce regret in her for her actions. I could carry it out. I made the decision to come up with a plan of action. I'll start dancing her now. The next day, I took the day off work and traveled to a nearby small town to visit the father of my wife. I want to give you some background information about this individual. He had spent practically his whole life serving his nation as a retired colonel. These are not simply hollow words. This is a genuine guy who sacrificed everything for the benefit of his country. I encountered him pretty frequently, and we frequently went to him in the bath when I was caring for his daughter, who would later become my wife. I treated her badly both times I spoke to her. The colonel probably believed he had given his daughter in marriage to a virgin, since he barely ever allowed her to leave the house. She only had activities at school and home. I suppose that's why when she married me, she went all out and went out with everyone else. I thus made the decision to exact this exact retaliation. I was well aware that my wife's father would probably just kill my wife if he learned what his cherished daughter had done. Of course, I may be exaggerating, but he would have likely done the same if she had been present when I informed him. The colonel first stumbled, and for a few moments I even worried a bit about his health because of how old he was. But it turned out that the soldier was a tough guy. He poured himself a drink of vodka and quickly drained it while turning to face me. Then he stealthily rose up and stumbled into the next room after repeating the same technique twice more. I then understood that I needed to go back. The essential information had been sent to the intended recipient, and now that I had forced my wife out of the family home, repercussions were certain to follow. Thankfully, we hadn't started a family yet. I quietly sat in the driver's seat and headed to the home. Right first, I want to reassure everyone that nothing dreadful or heinous occurred to my wife. When I got home, I collected all of my ex-wife's belongings in a cool-headed manner and calmly threw them out the door. I should make mention of the significant fact that my wife was observing everything I did. Even so, she did not move. She was able to decipher everything from my icy gaze. I didn't cause a big controversy, since I knew very well that my wife cared more about the financial values I could provide for her than about me. But just now, everything would vanish from her in a second. After all, I, a licensed attorney, had taken the trouble to draft a prenuptial agreement, and my wife would now be without all she had been enjoying so safely for the previous several years. The actual and most heinous kind of punishment for her is that. Finally, a year later, I ran into a friend of my ex-girlfriend and casually asked about her well-being. She said that her father had discontinued all communication and thrown her out of the house. She currently resides outside of her hometown with a man she has a common-law marriage to. They lead relatively simple lives, some could even say separate ones. My ex-wife frequently writes on social media about how I wrecked her entire life and how I was such a jerk. For more than 20 years, my wife and I had shared a home. 6 months ago, we had our anniversary. Our recently married 21-year-old daughter got us a brand new contemporary TV set as a gift for this occasion. Our family was never wealthy, but we always had enough money. My wife, a writer by trade, occasionally goes to other cities on business, which provides the family with a substantial one-time income. Together, we both make decent money. Of course, I wish she didn't have a job at all, but she enjoys writing articles and interacting with new people so much that she doesn't want to quit her job. By the way, I was the one who started her employment at the previous job, since the manager of the magazine where my wife currently works is a longtime friend of mine. Up until a certain point, I was generally content. My wife informed me one evening. I can't remember when exactly, a month or two ago, that she was traveling to a nearby town to interview a rock star who was due to perform. I was a little disappointed since I planned to spend the next evening with her alone, but my wife was so thrilled to tell me about the trip's plans that I couldn't help but grin and give her a beautiful kiss. I wished her well and a safe journey. She came back 3 days later. Her actions were peculiar in some way. I questioned her numerous times about her health and her ability to carry out her intentions. In any case, how went the interview? In response to all of my inquiries, she grinned at me bewilderedly and assured me that everything was okay. Even though I had no more questions, something inside of me kept me up at night like a creaky cat, and there was a reason, it turned out. Soon after, I received a call from an old buddy who had assisted in getting my wife a job and invited me to the bar. I affirmed. It had been a while since we had our last drink together. We met and had a casual conversation about something at the time specified in the contract on the spot, but things continued to get worse. My friend offered me a drink or two and then launched into a monologue, saying, "Buddy, I have something to tell you. Just pledge to exercise self-control, though wary." I nodded. Igor revealed to me information that I could only have imagined in my darkest nightmare. My wife had betrayed me when I was on my most recent work trip. The offender stated it after becoming wasted during an interview with a music star. My friend removed the video from the changing area. I regret seeing the tape. My fury, bitterness, and rage knew no bounds. My wife naturally noticed my condition when I arrived home. When she realized what had happened, she almost fell to her knees and started to apologize and give me reasons. My pain was severe. How does one forgive such an act? And earlier, we were really content. In response to her cries for mercy, I remained silent. I didn't say a word as I quietly left the flat. The next day, I went to my daughter's place to sleep so as not to disturb her and her husband. I behaved deliriously for the next 24 hours. I can't recall how I completed work-related reports, reached her, or returned. I came late at my home. My daughter and son, along with the rest of my family, were there and waiting for me. They voiced their thoughts on the mother's genuineness and regret. The cheater also promised to resign from her position and show me that she was truly sorry for her error and was unable to forgive herself. She pleaded with me not to divorce her. I kept quiet while I listened to them. And I was even relieved that my kids had the good sense to retain their fond feelings for both the guilty parent and me as a parent. But I'm unable to pardon my wife. I keep seeing the horrible videos picture. I understand that I will never be able to sleep with my wife again. That concludes the tale of our hero. Comment with your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe and like. You have a lot of wonderful stories to read. Additionally, you can send me your original life stories, which I will share. And as usual, I send my best wishes your way. And best wishes. I appreciate your attention. The next story is about a husband coming home early in the morning and seeing his wife naked on her lover. Sometimes people decide on the spot who don't expect this from themselves. And the results are sometimes shocking and sometimes hilarious. In this case, the cheating spouse ended up doing just fine. And the cheating spouse was left with nothing. After stories like this, you really start to believe in karma or divine providence. Who's to say? It all started when Vadim in the social networking news saw the publication of a confession of a certain girl whom he accepted as a friend a few months ago at her request. The gist of it came down to her having an affair on the side. And she, appropriately enough, was married. She asked for advice on what to do about her husband and her lover. She loves her husband, but has an irresistible craving for a new partner. This craving is exclusively animal in nature. Desire for sex with a man after his appearance sex with her husband is not one at all. But at the same time, there is no mental craving for a new partner. That is why she is ashamed in front of her husband. And she cannot stop. Vadim wrote a comment that she has to make a choice at any rate or tell her husband everything about her inability to stop. If he knew then that he was really giving advice to his own wife. But there must have been a vibe because he got a chill inside of him after he posted it. Suddenly, he thought about his relationship with his wife and realized how estranged they had become in the last couple of months. He also wondered specifically about his wife. She was getting a little rambunctious. Vadim decided to talk to his wife, discuss their lives, and do it in a positive atmosphere. A couple of days later, he took the afternoon off from work and bought a bouquet of flowers, champagne, and drove home. His wife works in the network and promotes social networking accounts. Naturally, he wanted to surprise her in this way. But not every husband is as lucky as he is. He saw his wife live in bed with another man in the process. She was on top of him in a pose on the stairs. I don't know about Vadim, but I certainly wouldn't have reacted the way he did. They were engrossed in the act of merging, didn't notice his arrival. Vadim went into the hall, took his camera, and spied some pictures. Then he left the house. He walked aimlessly around the city, coming to his senses. Thoughts of revenge ran through his head. He imagined all sorts of ways to humiliate his wife. But after walking around for a few hours, the fuse had passed. Vadim firmly decided not to clarify the relationship, just to post pictures on Facebook, thus alerting his wife. Of course, this surprise was not without revenge. All mutual acquaintances saw the Pico picture. The wife was shocked. A husband who would not accept his wife's lies. That's how he titled his post. While posting a series of pictures of adultery on Facebook, he also wrote, "When you came home to cuddle your wife and find another man in bed with your beloved, something inside forever dies. Good men deserve good women. Goodbye, Alice." Facebook users then erupted. The vast majority stood up in support of the guy's despicable wife. Everyone wrote to him, "You're too good for her." Subsequently, I wrote to him to find out how their situation was resolved. He narrated that they were divorced. And his wife also told him that she had made that post about cheating on her husband under a different account. She told him about it, wanting to soften her guilt. Like she was agonizing, actually asking him to forgive her. But when he told her that he decided to surprise her under the influence of that publication, she regretted writing it. But as they say, that's karma in action. And Vadim started a relationship with a girl who was his virtual friend. He liked her. But while he was married, I couldn't believe I was asking this of him. We were sitting in our cozy living room, the fireplace casting a warm glow. "Would you ever consider sharing me?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. His eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't immediately dismiss it. He looked thoughtful, almost curious. And there it was. The beginning of the end or the start of something new. Who knew? My stomach was doing somersaults, and I couldn't tell if it was excitement or pure, unadulterated terror. We spent the next few days discussing the idea. Each conversation felt like a high-stakes negotiation. "Are you sure this is what you want?" He'd ask, brows furrowed, looking at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I kept explaining that it was about excitement, about shaking things up. Honestly, I wasn't even sure myself, but his willingness to consider it surprised me. Was it possible he was just as curious, just as bored? I reached out to a close friend, Jessica, who had experience in open relationships. Over coffee at our favorite cafe, she spilled the beans on her adventures. "It's freeing," she said, her eyes sparkling. "But it can also get messy. Really messy." She warned me about potential pitfalls but also spoke of the excitement and newness it brought to her own marriage. Her stories fueled my curiosity and my resolve. If Jessica could do it, why couldn't I? My husband and I set boundaries and rules. We agreed on complete honesty and communication. "It's only about adding excitement, not replacing what we have," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it myself. The mix of excitement and trepidation was intoxicating. This could either be the best decision of our lives or an unmitigated disaster. No pressure. The first candidate was found through a dating app. His name was Mark, a charming, well-spoken man who seemed perfect. We chatted online for a week, sharing interests and fantasies. It was thrilling in a way I hadn't felt in years. I told my husband everything, and he seemed supportive, albeit with a hint of jealousy lurking beneath the surface. It was a strange cocktail of emotions, but we were in it together. Or so I hoped. The first meeting was nerve-wracking. We chose a neutral location, a quiet, upscale bar. My husband and I went together, but he sat a few tables away, nursing a drink and observing as Mark and I exchanged pleasantries. The tension in the air was palpable. I could feel my husband's eyes on us, a mix of curiosity and something darker. Mark and I hit it off immediately. He was charming and attentive, making me feel special in a way I hadn't in years. As the evening wore on, I found myself laughing, flirting, and genuinely enjoying his company. When the night ended, my husband and I had a long talk. He admitted to feeling jealous but also aroused by the experience. It was a bizarre, confusing mix of emotions for both of us. We decided to move forward cautiously, dipping our toes further into this uncharted territory. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The excitement was electric, but so was the underlying current of potential disaster. And honestly, I wasn't sure which I was more excited about. The first intimate encounter with Mark was planned meticulously. A hotel room, separate from our home life, seemed like the safest way to dip my toes into this uncharted territory. I remember standing outside the door, keycard in hand, heart pounding like I was about to commit a crime. In a way, I was breaking all the unspoken rules of our marriage. Excitement mixed with guilt churned in my stomach, but Mark's charm and confidence were a steadying force. We shared a passionate night, and I felt a rush of emotions that I hadn't felt in years. It was exhilarating, confusing, and utterly addictive. Returning home, I faced my husband. He was waiting, his eyes scanning me for clues. "How was it?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. He wanted to know every detail, and I obliged, sparing nothing. His reactions were a mix of arousal and jealousy, which only complicated my feelings. That night, our own intimacy was intense, driven by the taboo experience. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were playing with fire. Mark and I continued to meet regularly, each encounter becoming more intense. We explored each other's fantasies, pushing boundaries I never thought I'd cross. The secrecy and thrill made it all the more exhilarating. It was a double life, one filled with passion and danger. And I was living for it. But cracks began to show. My husband started exhibiting signs of discomfort. He became more distant and irritable, despite his initial agreement. Our conversations about the arrangement grew more strained, and I began to worry about the impact on our marriage. Was this really just about excitement, or was it tearing us apart? One night, Mark introduced me to his circle of friends. They were a lively, adventurous group, and I found myself drawn to their carefree lifestyle. It was intoxicating to be part of their world. One evening, we attended a party where the boundaries of our arrangement were tested further. The music was loud, the drinks flowed freely, and inhibitions were left at the door. At the party, I met Lisa, a stunning woman who exuded confidence. She took an immediate interest in me, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Mark encouraged the interaction, and before I knew it, Lisa and I were sharing an intimate moment. It was a new experience that added another layer of complexity to my feelings. It was thrilling and confusing, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. Back home, my husband confronted me about the growing frequency and intensity of my encounters with Mark. He expressed his discomfort and jealousy, questioning if this was still just about excitement. The tension between us reached a boiling point. His eyes were full of hurt, and I felt a pang of guilt that was hard to ignore. "Is this what you really want?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. I didn't have an answer. The thrill was real, but so was the cost. I was caught in a web of my own making, torn between the excitement of my affair with Mark and the unraveling of my marriage. The line between excitement and destruction had become dangerously thin, and I was teetering on the edge. Our arguments became more frequent. My husband and I were no longer on the same page. Every conversation turned into a battlefield. "You're prioritizing Mark over us," he accused, his voice tinged with hurt and anger. I felt torn between the excitement of my relationship with Mark and my commitment to my husband. Was it worth it, this thrill that was slowly ripping apart the fabric of our life together? Despite the tension, I continued seeing Mark. Our connection deepened, and one night, he dropped the bombshell. "I think I'm falling for you," he said, his eyes earnest and intense. Flattering, sure, but confusing as hell. Did I want this? My husband noticed the change in my demeanor, the lingering smiles, the distracted looks. His suspicion grew, and so did the distance between us. One evening, I came home to find my husband had packed a bag. "I need space to think," he said, avoiding my eyes. The reality of the situation hit me like a freight train. I might be losing him and our marriage. Panic set in, and the house felt unbearably empty without him. Desperate for guidance, I reached out to Jessica again. Over another coffee, I poured out my heart. She warned me that emotions could complicate any open relationship. "You need to address your feelings honestly with him," she advised. Her words resonated, cutting through the fog of my confusion. It was time to face the music. Mark sensed my turmoil and offered his support. One evening, he confessed his growing attachment to me, suggesting a future together. It was tempting, but deep down, I knew it wasn't what I truly wanted. This experiment had spiraled out of control, and I was on the verge of losing everything that mattered. I decided to end things with Mark. Our final meeting was emotional. He understood my decision but was clearly hurt. I felt a mix of relief and sadness, knowing I had to focus on repairing my marriage. As I walked away from him, I realized just how much I had risked. Returning home, I found my husband waiting. We had a long, heartfelt conversation. I apologized for letting things go too far, for prioritizing the excitement over our relationship. He admitted his own mistakes and vulnerabilities. It was a raw, honest moment between us. We agreed to start anew, setting firmer boundaries. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. The mystery of what our future held was daunting, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time, with my husband by my side. Rebuilding trust was like trying to piece together a shattered vase with a blindfold on. We were a mess, and couples therapy felt like our last lifeline. Sitting on that therapist's couch, baring our souls, was painful but necessary. The therapist, let's call her Dr. Fix-It, helped us navigate the emotional minefield and set some realistic expectations. She had this annoying way of getting to the heart of the matter, making us confront the stuff we'd been avoiding for far too long. Rediscovering shared interests became our new mission. Weekend hikes, which we used to love, were back on the agenda. There's something about trudging through the woods that clears the mind. We started cooking together again, a dance of chopping and stirring that reminded us of the early days. Intimate evenings with no distractions brought us back to each other, slowly but surely. It was a reminder of why we fell in love in the first place. I cut off all contact with Mark and his friends. It felt like ripping off a band-aid, necessary but painful. I deleted his number, unfollowed him on social media, and avoided places where we might run into each other. My husband appreciated the effort, though I could see it would take time for him to fully trust that I was committed. Trust isn't built overnight, after all. Social challenges were another hurdle. Friends and family had noticed the strain in our marriage, and their well-meaning questions were like salt in the wound. We decided to keep the details private, focusing on our own journey. It wasn't anyone else's business, and the last thing we needed was unsolicited advice. A major breakthrough came when we revisited the reasons behind our initial decision to open up our marriage. Sitting at our kitchen table, we realized our communication had been seriously lacking. We'd been so busy avoiding the tough conversations that we'd lost sight of each other. Admitting our fears and desires, openly and honestly, brought us closer. It was like a weight had been lifted. We planned a romantic getaway, a chance to escape the daily grind and focus on each other. It was a turning point, filled with laughter, deep conversations, and renewed intimacy. We rediscovered the joy of being together, away from the chaos and expectations of everyday life. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to rewrite our story. Returning home, we continued to prioritize our relationship. Date nights became a regular thing, spontaneous gestures of affection were the norm, and constant communication was our new mantra. It wasn't always easy, old wounds take time to heal, but we were stronger together. The cracks were still there, but they were becoming less noticeable as we filled them with love and understanding. Our journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, we were facing it together. And that made all the difference. Just when I thought we were in the clear, the past came knocking. Months later, I received a message from Mark. "Hey, just checking in. How are you?" Short, simple, but it packed a punch. It stirred up old feelings, excitement, guilt, curiosity. But I knew better than to respond. I showed the message to my husband, and we discussed it openly. No secrets, no hidden agendas. It was awkward but necessary. Trust was still a fragile thing, and I wasn't about to jeopardize it again. Despite my resolve, the temptation lingered like an itch I couldn't scratch. I missed the excitement and freedom of my time with Mark. It was like a siren's call, beckoning me back to a world of thrill and danger. Staying focused on my marriage felt like walking a tightrope. My husband sensed my struggle and offered his support, reaffirming his commitment. His understanding made it both easier and harder. How could I still crave that forbidden fruit when I had everything I needed right here? Then came the work event. Enter David, charming, attentive, and all too reminiscent of Mark. I felt an instant attraction. Oh great, here we go again, I thought, rolling my eyes at the universe's twisted sense of humor. The lessons from my past were fresh in my mind, but the temptation was real. I had to be careful. David's interest became more apparent as he invited me for drinks after work. I declined, aware of the slippery slope. Instead, I went home and confided in my husband about the situation. He appreciated my honesty, and we discussed how to handle it. It felt good to be on the same team, facing the challenge together. But David was persistent, and his advances grew bolder. I felt increasingly uncomfortable, like a fly caught in a spider's web. Enough was enough. I decided to confront him directly, making it clear that I was committed to my marriage and not interested in anything more than a professional relationship. It was awkward. David's ego took a hit, but it was necessary. The confrontation with David wasn't fun, but it did the trick. He respected my boundaries, and things returned to normal at work. My husband and I felt a renewed sense of trust and partnership, having navigated another potential threat. It was another test, and we had passed with flying colors. We celebrated our resilience with a weekend getaway, reinforcing our bond. The experience with David was a stark reminder that temptations would always exist. But our commitment to each other was stronger. We spent the weekend reconnecting, laughing, and talking about our future. It was a reminder of how far we'd come and how much we had to look forward to. The past had its claws in me, but I was determined to keep moving forward. Temptation might come knocking again, but this time, I was ready. We were ready. Our marriage had weathered the storm, and we were stronger for it. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was enough. Moving to a new city felt like stepping off a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying all at once. We needed a fresh start, away from old memories and influences that still clung like shadows. The process of finding a new home and settling in was thrilling. Each new discovery, every box unpacked, brought us closer. Our new house had a charming, lived-in feel that screamed, second chances. Our new neighborhood was vibrant and full of possibilities. There were quirky cafes, a bustling farmer's market, and friendly neighbors who actually smiled. We made an effort to build a supportive community around us, making new friends and creating a positive environment. It was refreshing to be surrounded by people who didn't know our past, who only saw the happy couple we were striving to become. I started a new job, which came with its own set of challenges and opportunities. It was a chance to reinvent myself, to focus on personal growth. My husband was supportive, cheering me on from the sidelines. Our relationship continued to strengthen, the wounds from the past slowly healing. Each day felt like a step forward, a move towards something better. We joined a local couples group, participating in activities and workshops that focused on relationship building. It was surprisingly fun, and we learned a lot about ourselves and each other. The group provided us with tools to maintain our connection, to keep the spark alive. It was like having a support network for our marriage, and we embraced it wholeheartedly. Our anniversary rolled around, and we decided to celebrate with a special trip. We revisited places that held significant memories for us, places that had seen us at our best and worst. It was a reaffirmation of our love and commitment, a reminder of how far we'd come. The trip was filled with laughter, deep conversations, and moments of pure joy. It felt like we were rediscovering each other all over again. Our relationship flourished as we embraced new experiences together. We took up hobbies, traveled to new destinations, and created new traditions. The past was behind us, and we were focused on building a bright future. It was liberating to let go of the old baggage and just live in the moment. One evening, we hosted a dinner party for our new friends. The house was filled with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and good company. Looking around, I realized how much we had grown and how strong our bond had become. We were surrounded by people who genuinely cared about us, and it was a joyful occasion. Life wasn't perfect, but it was pretty darn close. We had faced our demons, battled through the storms, and come out stronger on the other side. Moving to a new city had been the right decision, a fresh start that we desperately needed. Our journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic about the future. We were building something beautiful together, one day at a time. Out of the blue, I received another message from Mark. "Hey, I'm in town. Would love to catch up." Just like that, the old temptation resurfaced, clawing at the peace we'd worked so hard to build. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Here we go again, I thought, rolling my eyes at the universe's twisted sense of humor. But this time was different. I wasn't the same person, and our marriage wasn't the same fragile thing it once was. I showed the message to my husband, and we discussed it calmly. No secrets, no drama, just open communication. We decided to meet Mark together, seeking closure. The encounter was awkward but necessary. We chose a neutral coffee shop, one of those places with overpriced lattes and hipster baristas. Mark looked the same, charming, confident, and completely unaware of the chaos he'd left in his wake. He apologized for his part in the turmoil and wished us well. It was a moment of healing and finality, the last piece of the puzzle clicking into place. After the meeting, my husband and I felt a sense of relief. The past was truly behind us, and we were free to move forward without any lingering doubts or regrets. It was like a weight had been lifted, and we could finally breathe again. Our relationship entered a new phase of stability and trust. We continued to nurture our bond, finding joy in the little moments and supporting each other through life's challenges. Cooking dinner together, late-night talks, spontaneous road trips, these were the things that mattered now. We planned a future together, discussing dreams and goals. Our experiences had taught us the importance of communication and honesty. We felt more connected than ever. We dreamed of traveling the world, starting new projects, and maybe even expanding our family. The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time, I felt truly hopeful. Our journey wasn't without its ups and downs, but we faced each challenge together. We had become a stronger, more resilient couple, capable of weathering any storm. There were moments of frustration and doubt, but they were fleeting, overshadowed by the love and trust we had rebuilt. One evening, we revisited the initial proposal that had set everything in motion. We laughed and reflected on how much we had learned. "Can you believe we actually did that?" I asked, shaking my head. It was a reminder of our journey and the love that had endured. We had taken a risk, faced our fears, and come out stronger on the other side. As time passed, our love deepened. We continued to grow individually and as a couple, always mindful of the lessons we'd learned. Our marriage was a testament to our commitment and resilience. We had faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious. The past was a distant memory, a chapter in our book that we had finally closed. Life had a way of throwing curveballs, but we were ready. Together, we could handle anything. Our love had been tested, stretched, and nearly broken, but it had survived. And that was something worth celebrating every single day. We decided to renew our vows, celebrating our journey and reaffirming our commitment. The ceremony was intimate, with close friends and family. It was a beautiful reminder of our love and the strength we had gained. Standing there, surrounded by the people who mattered most, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't just about the words we spoke, it was about the journey we had taken to get here. Every tear, every argument, every late-night talk had led us to this moment. Our renewed vows were a symbol of our new beginning. We felt a sense of closure and accomplishment, knowing we had overcome significant challenges together. The past was a series of lessons learned, each one making us stronger. As we exchanged rings, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. We had faced our demons and come out the other side more united than ever. We continued to build a life filled with love and adventure. Our shared experiences had created a deep bond, and we looked forward to the future with optimism and excitement. We traveled to new places, tried new things, and made countless memories. Each adventure was a testament to our resilience and the love that had seen us through the toughest times. Our friends and family noticed the positive change in our relationship. We became a source of inspiration, sharing our story and the lessons we had learned with others facing similar challenges. It was strange at first, being seen as a beacon of hope, but it was also incredibly fulfilling. If our story could help even one couple navigate their own rocky path, it was worth it. We focused on giving back to our community, volunteering together and supporting causes we cared about. It was a fulfilling way to strengthen our bond and make a positive impact. Whether it was helping out at the local shelter or organizing community events, we found joy in making a difference together. It added another layer to our relationship, a shared purpose that brought us even closer. Our relationship continued to evolve, always growing and adapting. We remained committed to each other, constantly working to keep our love strong and vibrant. It wasn't always easy, but nothing worth having ever is. We learned to communicate better, to listen more, and to never take each other for granted. As the years passed, we faced new challenges, but our love and resilience carried us through. There were health scares, career changes, and the inevitable ups and downs of life. But through it all, we leaned on each other, our bond unbreakable. We had built a solid foundation, and our marriage continued to thrive. Looking back, it was clear that our journey was far from conventional. But then again, who wants a boring love story? Ours was filled with twists and turns, heartache and joy, mistakes and triumphs. And I wouldn't have it any other way. We had found our way back to each other, stronger and more in love than ever. And that was a happy ending worth fighting for. We became mentors to younger couples, sharing our story and offering guidance. Who would have thought we'd be the ones doling out advice? Our experiences had given us valuable insights, and we were eager to help others navigate their own relationships. It was almost surreal seeing these wide-eyed couples looking up to us, hanging on our every word. Trust me, I'd say with a wink, if we can survive our roller coaster, so can you. Our family grew, and we cherished the moments spent with loved ones. The house was always buzzing with laughter, love, and the chaos of new beginnings. Grandkids running through the hallways, holiday dinners that turned into dance parties. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Our home wasn't just a place, it was a living, breathing testament to the life we'd built together. We continued to travel and explore the world together, creating new memories and deepening our bond. Each adventure brought us closer and enriched our lives. Whether it was sipping wine in Tuscany or hiking the trails in Patagonia, every trip was a new chapter in our story. The world was our playground, and we embraced it with open arms and hearts full of wonder. Our relationship became a legacy of love, a testament to our commitment and resilience. We faced each new day with gratitude, knowing we had built something truly special. Each morning felt like a gift, another chance to love and be loved. Our journey had been anything but ordinary, and that was the beauty of it. We celebrated milestones and anniversaries with joy and reflection. Each year was a reminder of how far we had come and the love that had sustained us. We'd look through old photo albums, laughing at our younger selves and marveling at the path we'd taken. Every laugh line and gray hair was a badge of honor, a testament to our enduring love. Our story became a cherished memory, a tale of love, growth, and perseverance. We looked back with pride, knowing we had overcome significant challenges and emerged stronger. It wasn't always easy, but nothing worth having ever is. We had built a life that was rich with experience and love, and that was something to be proud of. We embraced the future with hope and excitement, always looking forward to the next chapter in our journey. Our love was a constant source of strength and inspiration. There was no end to the adventures we could have, no limit to the love we could share. We were each other's rock, and that gave us the courage to face whatever came our way. As we grew older, we cherished the simple moments, the quiet evenings, the shared laughter, the comfort of being together. Our love was a beacon of light, guiding us through life's ups and downs. Sitting on the porch, holding hands, watching the sunset, it was in these moments that the true essence of our love shone brightest. We continued to nurture our relationship, always mindful of the lessons we had learned. Our love was a living testament to our journey and the strength of our bond. We knew what it took to keep the flame alive, and we never took each other for granted. Every day was a new opportunity to show love and appreciation. Our legacy of love inspired others, a reminder that true love could overcome any obstacle. We shared our story with pride, knowing we had created something beautiful and enduring. It wasn't just about us, it was about the hope and inspiration we could offer to others. Love, after all, was meant to be shared. In our twilight years, we looked back on our journey with gratitude. Our love had been tested, but it had endured and flourished. We were proud of what we had built together. The challenges we had faced only made our bond stronger, and we were grateful for every moment, good and bad. Our final years were filled with peace and contentment. We had faced many challenges, but our love had always been our guiding light. We cherished every moment together, knowing how precious time was. There was a quiet joy in just being together, in the simple act of loving each other. As we reached the end of our journey, we knew our love would live on in the hearts of those we had touched. Our story was a testament to the power of love, commitment, and resilience. We faced the future with hope, knowing our love had left a lasting legacy. And as we held hands, looking out at the world we had built together, we knew that love truly was the greatest